There is a specific kind of silence that settles into a room right before your entire life shatters. It's heavy, almost suffocating, like the air right before a lightning strike. I was sitting on my newly assembled sofa, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the clinking of dishes as the man I thought I was going to marry washed plates in the kitchen. We had just painted the walls a soft, hopeful gray. We were building a home. I was finally safe. And then the front door nearly splintered off its hinges from the sheer violence of the fists pounding against it. I didn't know it yet, but the life I thought I had painstakingly built was nothing but a cheap stage set, and the curtain was about to drop in the most spectacular, humiliating way possible. The road to that front door started in the wreckage of my early 30s. I had just clawed my way out of an incredibly toxic, suffocating marriage. My self-esteem was a bruised, fragile thing, and I was desperate for anything that felt like solid ground. Enter Garrick. We had gone to the same middle school, though I barely remembered him as the scrawny, quiet kid who always stared at his shoes. When he slid into my social media messages years later, the scrawny kid was gone. In his place was a towering, heavily tattooed mountain of muscle with a disarming smile and a protective, gentle demeanor. He seemed fascinated by me, and I was entirely swept away by the fact that this drop-dead gorgeous man was giving me his undivided attention. Our long-distance messages quickly escalated into hours-long phone calls. He was incredibly sweet, wrapping me in a cocoon of validation I hadn't felt in years. Within just a few weeks, he packed his entire life into a truck and drove cross-country to move in with me. Looking back through the cruel, sharp lens of retrospect, it was a textbook rebound. It was a chaotic, impulsive leap into the deep end, but at the time it felt like fate. A few months into our domestic bliss, we were out on the front porch when the neighbors from 2 doors down strolled over with warm smiles and a bottle of wine. Seela and Brecken. They were roughly our age, vibrant and incredibly welcoming. The four of us clicked with a rare, effortless magnetism. Dinners became a communal affair. We were eating together 4 nights a week, splitting grocery bills and leaving our spare keys on each other's kitchen counters. Seela quickly morphed into my confidant, my best friend in this new chapter of life. Her parents even started treating Garrick and me like extended family. It was a wholesome, idyllic bubble. I remember standing in the crisp autumn air at Seela and Brecken's wedding, hot tears of genuine joy spilling over my cheeks as they exchanged vows. The night before that wedding, Seela had gotten entirely too drunk on champagne. She collapsed onto my shoulder, sobbing hysterically, repeating over and over that she was a horrible friend to me. I stroked her hair, soothing her, chalking it up to pre-wedding jitters and alcohol. I reassured her she was the sister I never had. Ironically, she and Garrick had even adopted an obnoxious habit of calling each other big brother and little sister. I thought it was endearing. I was a fool. The illusion held until that quiet Tuesday night. I was curled up on the couch. Garrick was rinsing a pan in the kitchen, which offered a direct line of sight to the entryway. The sudden deafening pounding on the heavy wood of our front door made me jump out of my skin. A muffled, enraged scream ripped through the drywall, profanities, raw and guttural. I scrambled to my feet, my mind jumping to the worst-case scenario, a home invasion, a random attack. I spun toward the kitchen, expecting Garrick to grab something to defend us. Instead, the blood had entirely drained from Garrick's face. He stood frozen, a wet sponge dripping onto the linoleum. His eyes were wide, darting like a cornered animal. "Do not open that door," he hissed, his voice trembling. Then a familiar voice roared from the porch. It was Brecken. The confusion hit me like physical blow. I stared at Garrick. "What the hell is going on here?" I demanded, moving toward the entryway. Garrick didn't look at me. He set the sponge down with eerie calmness, reached back and pulled his t-shirt over his head, tossing it onto the island. "Well," he muttered, staring at the rattling deadbolt, "I guess this is happening now." "I'm sorry." He unlocked the door and pulled it open. Brecken didn't even hesitate. A heavy, closed fist met Garrick's jaw with a sickening crack that echoed in the small foyer. Garrick stumbled backward, tasting blood as Brecken lunged forward, his face contorted in pure agony. "How long?" Brecken screamed, the veins in his neck bulging against his collar. "How long have you been sleeping with my wife?" The words didn't register at first. They hovered in the air, a foreign language my brain refused to translate. My knees simply gave out. I hit the hardwood floor hard, the impact jarring my teeth. "Please," I choked out, staring at Garrick's bleeding mouth. "Please tell me this is not true." Garrick didn't answer. He was too busy dodging a second hook from Brecken. The two men spilled backward out the door, grappling and throwing wild, desperate punches in the driveway. Neighbors' porch lights began flicking on. Brecken was screaming it to the entire street, broadcasting my humiliation to anyone who would listen. Apparently, the guilt had eaten Sela alive, and she had confessed everything during a couple's counseling session an hour earlier. Still on my knees, I looked up. Standing just beyond the threshold, illuminated by the harsh amber glow of the porch light, was Sela. The world narrowed down to a singular, blinding point of red. This woman, the woman who had a key to my sanctuary, the woman whose wedding I wept at, the woman who called my boyfriend her big brother. She took a hesitant step forward, her eyes red-rimmed, lifting a hand in a pathetic gesture of peace. We need to talk," she whimpered, attempting to cross the threshold into my home. The grief evaporated, instantly incinerated by a rage so pure it tasted like copper. I pushed myself off the floor. "If you step 1 foot inside my house," I said, my voice dropping to a terrifyingly calm whisper, "I am going to remove you myself." Sela, possessed by some delusional audacity, planted her sneaker onto my entryway rug. I didn't think, I just reacted. I threw my right arm forward, throwing my entire body weight behind my knuckles. My fist collided directly with her cheekbone. The impact sent a sharp, agonizing shockwave all the way up to my elbow. Sela cried out, stumbling backward off the porch and landing hard in the decorative mulch. It was the first time I had ever struck another human being bare-fisted, and while my hand throbbed violently, the sheer satisfaction was a potent anesthetic. The police eventually arrived, sirens cutting through the suburban chaos. They separated the bleeding men. Sela, clutching her swelling face, shrilly demanded they arrest me for assault. The officers took one look at the hysterical, cheating wife, the furious husband, and the bruised boyfriend and essentially told her to walk it off. No charges were filed. The neighborhood show was over, but the damage was irreversible. I found out later that they had been sleeping together just 2 weeks after the four of us initially met. The endless dinners, the combined groceries, the sibling jokes, it was all a grotesque, elaborate cover for their affair. I packed Garrick's belongings into trash bags that very night and threw them onto the lawn. But anger is a restless thing, and mine demanded absolute destruction. Garrick had always been incredibly possessive of his phone. He would tilt the screen away when texting, and it always rested face down on the coffee table. With him temporarily displaced at a cheap motel, I sat in the quiet ruins of our living room, staring at his tablet he had left behind in his rush to leave. Petty curiosity morphed into a clinical need for the truth. He was a creature of habit, entirely devoid of imagination. I typed in our home Wi-Fi password, the screen unlocked. What I found in his hidden social media accounts didn't just break my heart, it severely tested my faith in human logistics. It wasn't just Sela, it was an empire of deception. This man had active, ongoing relationships with over 40 different women. 40. My stomach violently churned as I scrolled through endless threads of manipulation. There was a single mother who lived barely 10 minutes away. He had met her at his gym. Sickeningly, her 18-year-old daughter was also in his contacts, and the messages proved he was actively trying to sleep with her too. 6 of these women were receiving daily "I love you" texts. 2 were explicitly discussing ring sizes. He had slept with almost all of them over the past year, and the absolute pinnacle of this dark comedy. None of them knew about each other, not even Sela. In one thread I saw Sela boasting to a friend that Garrick was planning to leave me and marry her. How did he have the time? The excuses flooded back. The 4-hour motorcycle rides on Sunday afternoons, the endless gym sessions, the weekends spent shooting with the guys. Every single absence was a different woman's bed. I didn't cry, I made a pot of coffee and went to work. For 6 hours I took meticulous screenshots. Dates, times, explicit photos, false promises. I compiled an undeniable dossier of his depravity. Then I sent a mass message. I introduced myself to every single woman on that list. I included a photo of Garrick and me, specifically the one taken the day he claimed he told his uncle, "I found the one I'm going to marry." I hit send, effectively dropping a tactical nuke on his entire existence. The replies started rolling in within minutes. Some were heartbreaking, women whose worlds were collapsing just as mine had. Others were furious. A few of us ended up exchanging numbers, bonding over the sheer absurdity of being played by the same sociopathic gym rat. They forwarded me the panicked, desperate messages Garrick was suddenly blasting out as his 40-woman house of cards spectacularly imploded. We laughed. It was a dark, hollow laugh, but it was necessary. 3 hours after my digital carpet bombing, my phone buzzed. It was Garrick. "What the hell did you do?" I stared at the glowing screen. the lingering ache in my knuckles a comforting reminder of my reality. I typed back a single sentence, "Karma's a bitch, isn't it?" He had to change his phone number within the week. Several of the women's brothers and ex-husbands had caught wind of the situation, and the threats he received were explicit enough to run him out of the county. It has been years since that door nearly came off its hinges. I rebuilt my life, this time on an actual foundation, not a mirage. Yet the sheer audacity of this man continues to defy logic. Over the past 5 years, I have had to block 3 different new numbers. Just last month, a text popped up from an unknown area code, "I still think about you. You're the one that got away." I deleted it without a second thought. Some people never learn, but thankfully some of us do. We all want to believe in the fairy tale, especially when we're vulnerable and crawling out of a dark place. But the truth is, a solid foundation isn't built overnight. And it certainly isn't built on grand, sweeping gestures from someone who rushes you into a life you haven't had time to inspect. Red flags often look exactly like red carpets when you're desperate for a soft place to land. Never ignore your intuition, and never let anyone make you feel bad for demanding transparency. If they have nothing to hide, they won't guard their screens like state secrets. If this story resonated with you, or if you've ever had to deal with a master manipulator, drop a like on this video and hit that subscribe button. Share your own survival stories in the comments below. I read every single one. Until next time, keep your boundaries strong and your Wi-Fi passwords stronger.